How did you come up with those pieces, right, to change jujitsu, to come up with those things that would be more appealing to, Joe Sixpack, right? Because we talked about this a little bit earlier. You mentioned like the UFC. It's blood. People like watching that, whether they want to admit it or not. They like seeing that. And how did you look at Kasai when you started Kasai and think about what are the things I need to change in traditional jiu-jitsu in order for it to be more appealing?
Oh, it's a long question because we have spent, Greg can tell you, and even in the earlier days before Greg, I mean, we had Kasai on the drawing board for years before it actually came to fruition. We flew out, we had one notable trip. We flew out to see Kenny Florian, who ended up being part of our original team, still is, where we watched, a couple, because a lot of the fights going on back there, I'm forgetting the name, but what was the name of that big tournament with the drums?
We had Pride. Pride in Japan.
No, it was, anyway, forgetting the name.
Metamoris,
thank you, Greg. Metamoris, there was EBI. It was like a double-header weekend. There was one of each. We went to a bunch of academies, and we thought through, what would we do. So the answer is, here's at least how we thought of it. No gi versus gi. Tournament where 8 guys enter and 1 guy leaves was a very understandable story to everybody.
Right.
If you create a whole bunch of super fights, that's great. That's the way it's traditionally done. But, in UFC, you can't do that. We have a natural advantage. You can't have 4 MMA fights in one day.
Yeah, back to back to back.
Not realistic. And, So I just think the drama of bringing 8 guys in and 1 guy winning, having it be round robin versus elimination. Because you come to see the guy you want to fight, and if he loses in the first round, you're stuck. So everybody is guaranteed to fight somebody, and basically everybody's fighting each other, at least in your bracket. Right. So you get to see that. If you win, you have to win 4 times. So it's sort of a battle of attrition also. But then as far as the rules are concerned, we, stalling penalty, we try to get the refs to push the activity so there wasn't so much stalling. Advantages, hard for people to understand. We got rid of advantages. We gave you a point for most of the things that are advantages, are just pushing the action,
right,
to create, higher scores and
mission attempts.
Yeah. So we did, a whole bunch of things like that, and just after every show, we would sit down. How long would we sit down and we would just analyze, like, what can we do to make it better? Some of it was just production stuff, but when it came to rules, we just we had the biggest stage, biggest mat of any tournament. I mean, some of these tournaments, not naming names, but they're like on postage stamps, and you're constantly
out
on
of
the
bounds. We've all fought in them. You're out of bounds every 3 seconds.
And there's 2 things bad about going out of bounds. One is it disrupts the play, but the other worst part is you can get hurt. You can get hurt really badly. So we had the giant stage. Of course, the big guy, everybody always finds the corners anyway. So we hired spotters, like big ass guys that are just like keeping it on the stage. So it's not always the ref putting it back to the center. Just stuff like that. We promoted, we went aggressive and before, and going out to do interviews, building videos.
Right.
Our favorite thing was making videos, music videos, or just talking videos, just to get people excited and talk about it. Because and the other thing, last but not least, is what we did do something that's different than most promotions are either a tournament or they're super fights. Right. We did tournaments with super fights. So the ones with tournaments would have like some girls, whatever they did, some just filler, because you can't have the guys go out each round. You need a break in between. So we would put as much money into the tournament as we would to find the best super fights. And picking 8 people for a bracket and picking, what would end up being really 6 or 8 people for 3 or 4 super fights would be, that's our dream. It's like thinking of styles and, and how you would match this style. Like, what's your dream? We would just all sit around every day and say, what would be your dream match?
To see this.
We come up with some wacky stuff. It's silly, but we would talk about it. Then of course some guys aren't available, but then you brainstorm to come up with something else. And we do the same for the undercard. Now, I would still contest that, many of Kasai's undercards are as good as, main card. So they're just maybe not guys that people are as much of a household name as
Right.
Gordon or Greg Jones,
Right.
Whoever. But they're the next guys.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and think of all the guys that are dominating today, like the Tackett's and the Ritolos and people like that. That was our undercard,
right?
So
is them,
and we're seeing them matched up against people, comparable skills. So